Hello and welcome to Self-Employment, the Spirit of Entrepreneurship. Today's show is going to be on the topic of employment, and we have a couple of guests who are with us today. We have Tina Spears, who is the Executive Director of the Community Provider Network of Rhode Island, and Steve Morse, who is the Transition Coordinator for West Bay. So we're going to, this show has typically been about self-employment and people with disabilities who have owned their own businesses, talking about that. But we're going to back it up today and we're going to talk about employment in general. So I thought we could start by each of you just telling the audience who you are and who you work for, and then we'll go from there. So
Sure.
Tina, we'll start with you.
Sure, great. Thank you for having me, Sue. My name is Tina Spears. I work for the Community Provider Network of Rhode Island. As you said, I'm the Executive Director, and essentially my organization represents 22 provider organizations, which are community organizations that support individuals living in the community with employment services, day services, residential services. So that's who I represent. Our organization really is, we would be considered a trade association, but I like to believe we are much more than a trade association. While we value the businesses that we have, what we really value is the community membership that we have. So we try to advance policies and practices that are in the best interests of the people that we support and serve. So that's kind of where we land in the landscape of employment for persons with disabilities.
Okay, great. And Steve, you tell us a little bit about yourself, and I know your organization is actually one of the organizations that's a member of CPNRI.
Yes, exactly. So I am the Transition Coordinator with West Bay, Rhode Island, and part of what we do is really working with individuals to connect them with opportunities for employment and kind of really honing in on building one's network and building opportunities for employment and community connectedness and things of that nature.
Right. So we're talking about employment, and when you think about employment, let's start by talking about why you think employment is so important for people with disabilities. Tina, what do you think?
Well, when I think of personally and from my network's perspective, when I think about employment, I think about that's a foundation of being an adult. I think most of us would identify ourselves with what we do for career. And certainly for anyone with a disability or without a disability, that holds true. So from our perspective, from a DDO, what we call Developmental Disability Organization perspective, we try and work from an individual's skill set and build opportunities from there, and really just to be a member of their community. I don't see employment, while we call it employment services, as a service. It's really a part of their life. So that's what, from a provider's perspective, it is really to allow an individual to gain the skills that they need to seek a career path that they want to be part of, just like everyone else in our community.
Steve, what do you think?
See, I agree. I think very much so of, also on the side of building community. I think of employment as part of expanding a network. So when I go to work, I don't think of it, I think of my job as building relationships with the individuals that I work with, individuals that we support, my coworkers, colleagues, things of that nature. So when I think of employment, I think of it from kind of a bigger standpoint of, it's more of a community dynamic and kind of connecting someone to that larger community aspect.
Right, and when you think about folks with disabilities who you know, and individuals that are either have a job in the community, a wage-paying job, or own their own business, what I've seen is just a tremendous increase in the person's self-esteem.
Exactly.
And who they see themselves as a person and fitting in like the rest of us, right? And so when you go to a party or you meet people, usually the first thing that somebody says is, "Hi, my name is so-and-so, what is it that you do?"
Exactly.
And so for individuals with disabilities, for them to be able to say, "Hi, my name is Sue and I'm a photographer," or whatever it is that the person is, I think carries a lot of weight and really helps the person feel really good and valuable as a human being, just like anybody else. Let's talk a little bit about the kinds of services that an individual can get through any of the community provider organizations. If somebody wants a job, is interested in a job, what's the first thing that they need to do, and what services are out there that someone can access?
So I guess I'll take that question to start. So From the perspective of the service system in Rhode Island, for somebody with a developmental disability, and that's where I'll speak from that community's perspective, an individual would seek services, they'd be eligible for services, and they would seek services either independently through a self-directed system or through a provider, which are the organizations that I represent. And when they go to an organization and they seek those services, they plan for it. You know, you sit down at a table, you sit with people that you know, your organization that's supporting you, and you identify what your goals are. And you say, you know, I enjoy horses, I enjoy farm work, I enjoy being part of a larger community in my church. And then from there, the team works with that individual to identify, well, what skills would you need if you wanted to get a career on a farm? And that's really how it emerges for an individual through my network. And then from there, the organization, either they themselves will support that individual with different types of supports and planning, or they would refer to another organization that might be better suited to meet their needs. So that's kind of how the process works within the community. But certainly, each and every individual is unique and different. I certainly have changed career paths a number of times. So individuals change course, learn different skills, and that's our organizations provide the supports that they need to achieve those goals.
One of the previous guests that we had on a different show was Doug Crandall, who I know both of you know, and Doug was talking about something that you're making a point about, which is the ideal conditions of employment for a particular person. And so when you think about that with folks with disabilities, again, people are no different than anyone else. And that's part of what some of the initial supports that agencies can provide to people to help a person to really figure out where their niche might be and what their ideal conditions are of employment, so that as they move down that road to pursue employment opportunities, they can be as successful as possible.
Absolutely.
What kinds of services or supports does West Bay provide for individuals that are interested in employment?
So we do provide opportunities in so we have an 11-night office, which it's called Creative Works. So that's a space for individuals who own their own businesses or are trying to get creative in developing their own business to come and have a space to be able to operate and kind of get creative and build some more of their products or their wares or whatever they're trying to kind of present to the community and sell off as options.
And do you guys have job coaches that will assist people that might be interested, that need some support on the job? Do you have?
We do, yes, the one-on-one job coaching and one-on-one job support. So the coach does go out with the individual, can work within the field and within any kind of employment realm and kind of support the individual with any variety of needs. So whether that's just supporting building the relationships within an employment opportunity, that's something that they can work on as well.
And so Tina mentioned that people initially, through their planning process, will bring up an interest in exploring employment as an option for some future component of or aspect of their life. Is that typically how you guys would approach someone that was interested in employment through the planning, it coming up in the planning process?
That would be preferred. So really honing in on kind of what your interests are, where your strengths are, and then building from there. What better way to kind of gain employment and do a great job in what you want to do than something you have an interest in?
Yeah,
How do people with disabilities even find out that there are employment supports that are out there? Because for years, people didn't have many supports available to them and stayed in lots of segregated kinds of environments. And for the last 10 years, there's been a big push here in Rhode Island to assist people to get out there. But still, people are not that familiar with what's the first step that I need to take, or who do I go to for if I have questions about that. So how do you get that message out there, or how do the organizations get that word out there to people that this is an option for people. This can happen if you really want it in your life.
Yeah. Do you mind if I take the lead on that one?
Sure, absolutely.
So it's just reminding me, you mentioned Doug Crandall, and one of his slogans is, does anyone in your network know that you're looking for employment? So I always advocate for everyone that we work with is let everyone know. Let everyone you know that you're looking for an employment. And I think that's the starting point, because it's all about the connections and it's all about the relationships that you build. So by letting everyone know that you're looking for an employment, that's going to open the door for other opportunities and those connections that you may have, or a friend or a colleague or someone may have, and just open that door for you.
Absolutely. And I know personally, many of the jobs I've held as an adult have been that exact example. It wasn't something that I was necessarily like, that's where I'm going. It actually happened naturally through community connections. But what I will say from the community provider network position is we're trying to build that system currently. Right now, there isn't good outreach or campaigning or real awareness throughout the community about programs that are emerging, opportunities that exist. So we're keenly aware of the fact that it's not out there. And we're working towards really solving that problem and thinking a little bit more creatively about how to get the information out, not only to the individuals and families within the community at large, but also even within our own provider organizations. Think more creatively, think broader. What else could we be doing differently? So we're working on it, but certainly connect with the provider organization you're with. There's many vehicles through the state agencies, through the Developmental Disability, BHGDH, affectionately known as Buddha. They have some opportunities that you can find on their website through the Office of Rehabilitative Services, and certainly through the Department of Labor and Training. So those are some primary sources of activities around opportunities for supported employment services, but it is not enough.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, and I know you both know this, Advocates in Action recently had their statewide conference, and one of the threads throughout that conference was an employment thread, because I think lots of times people with disabilities appreciate hearing from peers. When they hear the success stories of, I did it, I got a check, you know, I have my own job, or I own my own business, I think that carries a lot more weight than other professionals that may be talking to people about, you know, employment. So and those workshops that they offer through Advocates in Action or the Cross Disability Coalition has a Speakers Bureau, and they go out and also talk about employment. I think that helps too with getting the message out. But I agree with you that I think we need a more organized campaign for such a small state. You know, we should do a better job of being able to communicate some of the really good things that are happening in different areas throughout, as well as to share some information about, you know, individual stories that people will be able to appreciate. So we're going to take a really quick break at this point. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about, you just mentioned Department of Labor and Training. We're going to talk about some options that are available for funding through the Department of Labor and Training and some of the grants that have been out there to community agencies to help build that whole network of employment opportunities for folks with disabilities.
Perfect.
Great.
Welcome back to our show, Self-Employment, the Spirit of Entrepreneurship. So we're going to continue our conversation about employment. And Tina, you just made a comment about the Department of Labor and Training. So tell us a little bit about how the Department of Labor and Training is involved right now in Rhode Island with employment supports for individuals with disabilities.
Yeah, great segue from our previous section. Department of Labor and Training has really transitioned and transformed how they approach the workforce in Rhode Island. they have really adopted the approach of industry leads and partner organizations to support the demand. So that's really how they've transitioned their model, their workforce model. And fortunately, they're keenly aware of the needs of underserved populations in our workforce. So we are one of many partners that they work with, which we are considered the Rise to Work project, and it's a Pathways project. So we are a collection of organizations, West Bay being one of them, and we have Access Point, we have you in our program. So essentially DLT is saying to the community at large, we know your population is underserved, you need some training programs, you need some programs that will support an individual towards employment, and we want to partner you with some industry leads. So that's kind of how the model works. And from my perspective, from the community provider network, I am the lead organization kind of asserting a strategic vision for the disability community. And we are working on a number of projects, one of them being yours, one of them being Joel, another through Access Point Retail. And we also have a smaller project called Edge and End, a small woodworking project. And those were all small projects to really get some things off the ground. And now the project is really focused on making sure that our network is being strategic about what we do within the community at large. Some of the opportunities that I have through my network is that we're going to be doing some work with business leaders to determine what is the industry need, what do you need to know about the disability community to normalize the practice of employment for individuals in your workspace. So that's kind of some of the work that we're doing, but DLT has been a tremendous partner in trying to really test some theories, test some best practices, and do some different things. And certainly through your success for the Self-Employment Incubator, that was a leap of faith from the Department of Labor and Training, and we've seen some tremendous success from it.
And you're right, they've been incredibly supportive, providing us with additional funding in a second year, and attending different events that we've sponsored on behalf of people. And it's self-employment is not for everyone, but it is an option for people. So it's a great opportunity to be able to get some resources to assist folks that have that entrepreneurial spirit. Today, we're going to talk with Steve about one of the DLT projects that's called JOLT.
Yes.
So why don't you start by telling us what JOLT stands for and a little bit about that whole initiative.
Sure, so just another acronym to throw out there at you. So JOLT stands for Job Opportunities Learned Together, and it's really a partnership with Plan Ri and the Department of Labor and Training, and really working to kind of build those relationships and build a lot of those foundational skills. So doing some of that career exploration, some of that interest. So what are you interested in? Where do you kind of fall within that labor market? Building up some of those resume skills. So how do you actually build a resume? What does that look like? How do you interview for a position, and what does that entail? What goes into that process of actually applying and then interviewing and then following up with an employer? So that's a little bit about what we do in the job program.
Who's the target population, Steve, for participants?
Great question. So that's individuals who self-direct their service, self-direct their funding.
People that self-direct, meaning that they control the funding and it's not through a community provider organization.
Correct.
They're hiring their own staff and using one of the agencies as a fiscal intermediary.
Yes.
There's 5 in the state.
Correct.
So you guys, so that your focus is on individuals that are involved with self-directed supports.
Correct.
How many people do you have in the program now?
So right now in this, this is our first cohort. So we have 7 individuals in the first cohort, which is pretty amazing, I believe. They're a great group of individuals. I've kind of worked in tandem with Karen, who's the JOLT facilitator right now. So yeah, it's a great start for our first cohort.
And when did they start, and when does that?
So the first group started in the middle of September, and it ends in just about 2 weeks, I believe. The second week of December.
Okay. I was actually over at the program a couple of weeks ago because Karen asked me to come over to talk about self-employment, because 2 of the folks that's actually in this cohort are interested in starting their own businesses. Yes. One gal is interested in event planning, and she's actually done a number of events, from birthday parties to weddings to special events, coordinating tablecloths and napkins and plates and cakes, and a baby shower, I think, was another one.
Exactly.
To a young lady who has a real interest in pets, especially dogs, and wants to start her own dog walking business. So they're going to actually, when they graduate from your program, they're going to move over to us in January and participate in our business development series.
And we actually had the opposite happen. So we had two individuals who participated in your program and kind of came over, and they're really acting as almost peer mentors, if you will, in the JOLT program. So being able to kind of share their experiences as already having businesses and kind of operating with self-employment. So
I don't know if you've noticed, but there's some similarities between what we do, in that when you have community classes or when you have a small class, people have an opportunity to kind of bounce ideas off other people. And when I was there, I saw that. The folks that are in your program are very comfortable with one another. They're almost through the program at this point. And so they're feeling pretty confident about exploring job opportunities.
There's something to be said about the camaraderie that happens every day. So they meet twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays right now for this cohort. And the opening, we do an opening and a closing for each meeting. And the opening is usually just sharing kind of a hurrah for the week and what are some of the highlights. So anyone who went out and kind of asked for or applied for a position and got a call back or had an interview. So we're kind of celebrating those little triumphs right there, or an individual who secured a position. So we have one individual who actually just secured a position at BJ's Wholesale Club.
Great.
And she's giving samples out at BJ's, and she loves it. So she comes and just shares her experience of how many samples she gave out this week, and it's like a new number every week, which is great.
That's great. Were you going to say something, Tina?
I was just going to say that this is what was beautiful about, use the word beautiful, but beautiful about the opportunity through the Department of Labor and Training is it was not a prescribed, you must do this for that. It was really an opportunity to think outside the box, be creative, be individualized, be holistic in our approach. And many of our organizations know best practice, have some great techniques. Being able to apply them directly is sometimes a challenge, but this is what was great about, and why we've seen such success from the DLT programming.
What would you folks say are some of the gaps in services now, or where do you think we have some needs or need additional supports out there?
Well, I'll start with this one. I would say one of my number one focuses as a network is really building our partnerships externally. I think we've always traditionally what you would call a habilitative social service kind of system, and we need to think differently. We need to think beyond our walls of service and think about the community partnerships that we need to have, the educational responsibility that we have to take on to make sure that our community is aware of the disability community and what should or shouldn't be happening, and developing opportunities, developing training programs, training curriculum, integrating fully within the community. I'll give you a quick example if we have the time. So we had, because of the work that we've been doing with DLT, we've developed a partnership with the Rhode Island Nursery Landscape Association. And they run a winter intensive program, which is quite intense. It's 4 weeks long, it's for a month, it's for 8 hours a day. And there's very strict curricula. It's an apprentice type model for an individual to go through to learn certain skills to be able to be employable in the green industry. And we had a partnership with the executive director, Shannon Brawley, and she was willing to test an individual with a disability through that project. They were very unfamiliar with how would we support and train someone to learn these same skills? But a natural phenomenon that we see in community is that community gathering and support helped that person get through that project. Very, very successful, not only for himself, but for that cohort of individuals. They learned something about themselves. And then he moved on and was hired within the green industry. So it's just a great success story of the opportunity. And we have to test things. We have to know how they work, maneuver and shift, but that's really what we need to do more of. We need to do those things and build our networks externally so people know it's possible.
That makes perfect sense, as well as kind of spread that message of the financial empowerment of people with disabilities and building economic futures that are stable, so that people are seen as part of our workforce, and the value of the individual cannot be understated.
Exactly.
That's really something that I think we need to do a better job at, letting people speak for themselves. When people speak for themselves, I think it carries a lot of weight. So, we're really excited about DLT's involvement with the community agencies and just the diverse array of partners that are involved with your organization, and hopefully we'll have some of the other individuals and their programs on future shows. So, Steve, if somebody wants to get in touch with you guys, when will the next program begin?
So right now we're operating kind of on a rolling cohort model.
Okay.
We found that worked best because you could be partnered with kind of I'm going to say a peer mentor, if you will, and kind of take them under your wing, and kind of they're educating their peers that have already gone through, the first several weeks of the program. So the best way to kind of get connected with the program is to reach out to West Bay directly. I can share the phone number if you'd like.
Yeah, we can put that up on the screen.
Sure.
You can tell us.
Sure. So it's 401-738-9300, and you can ask to be connected with Karen Davis, who is actually the grant facilitator, or Sue Raposo, who is the director of community inclusion and employment at West Bay.
Okay, and Tina, if someone wants to get in touch with you and find out a little bit more about this array of different opportunities with DLT, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, I would contact me directly and contact me through my main number and at CPNRI. You can always go to our website, and that's just cpnri.org. But our number is 773-7771.
Okay. Well, I want to thank both of you for coming to today's show and talking in general about employment. I think that there's a lot of great stuff going on in Rhode Island, and we're really pleased to be able to have both of you on today's show as our guests. Thank you very much.
Thank you
for having us.